everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a bit long but it's very useful because I'll be sharing with you some of the tips and tricks that I usually do and how I prepare for the month of Ramadan, or basically any time of the year. So first off, I'm gonna start with freezing the veggies. Of course, before freezing any kind of veggies, you have to blanch it so that it stays fresh for a longer time and it keeps its color, taste, and texture. So for today, I'm gonna blanch some celery and carrots. They are cleaned and chopped into cubes. So I have some boiling water here in a pot. I'm gonna drop the celery first, and then I'm gonna let them cook for about 4 to 5 minutes. And this is what's called the blanching process. They are cooked for about 4 to 5 minutes. And here I have a bowl. I have in it some cold water. I put in it a colander. And you'll see why I have this setup ready for me. So after about 5 minutes of cooking the celery, I'm gonna remove it from the boiling water. Then I'm gonna put it directly in the cold water, and that is to stop the cooking process. So you wanna put them in the cold water for about 5 to 6 minutes until they cool down a bit. Then remove the colander from the cold water, let it drain very well, and set it aside to cool completely. Now I'm gonna repeat the same process with my chopped carrots. I'm gonna blanch them for about 5 minutes in boiling water, then remove them and put them in some ice cold water to stop the cooking process. Keep them in the cold water for about 5 to 6 minutes. Then you wanna drain them and set them aside to cool completely. So now the veggies are cooled completely. I'm gonna spread them on a single layer on a baking sheet lined with some nylon wrap, and I'm gonna freeze it just like that. And after the celery pieces are frozen, you can just break it apart just like that, because each piece is frozen on its own. They're not frozen as a one giant mass, and that's the good thing about it. So after breaking them apart, you want to put it in a Ziploc bag and then return it back to the freezer. And now whenever you need some celery for your cooking, you can just take the quantity that you want and then return the rest to the freezer. It's as simple as that. Of course, you can do the same process with green beans, sweet corn, and some peas, or basically any kind of veggie you usually use. Now to freeze some boiled chickpeas, and before cooking them, I soak them in water for about 12 hours. And they are cooked half the way through. So all I'm gonna do is to put it in a Ziploc bag. Now if you have a very big quantity, you can spread them in a single layer on a baking sheet, just like we did with the celery. Then freeze it, and after that you can put it in a Ziploc bag. But to me that's fine. I put them in my Ziploc bag in a single layer because I don't have a very large quantity. Don't forget to write the content of the bag and the date of freezing. Now let's move on to freeze our spring rolls and pies. We eat them a lot in the month of Ramadan, so it's a good idea to make them, store them, and freeze them ahead of time. So I made a batch of my mini spinach pies. So to freeze them, I put them in a single layer on a baking sheet lined with a parchment paper or a nylon wrap, and they should be separated and not sticking to each other, because if they freeze and they are sticking to each other, it will be so hard to break them apart. Now I'm gonna cover the whole sheet with a cling film so that they don't form a crust in the freezer. And once the whole batch is frozen, you'll notice that each piece is frozen on its own and they won't stick to each other even if you put the whole batch in a Ziploc bag. So now you wanna return them to the freezer and you have them ready for whenever you want some. You can take the amount that you like, thaw it, and bake it right away. You can also put them in a Tupperware and that works perfectly fine. Now the same freezing process can be done on your spring rolls, whatever kind of spring rolls you like or you usually prepare. You want to do the same thing, put them separately on a baking sheet lined with some cling film or a parchment paper. You want to freeze them, and then when they come out of the freezer, each spring roll is frozen on its own. You can then put the whole batch in a Ziploc bag and freeze it for later use or whenever you're craving some spring rolls. Don't forget to write the content of the bag and the date of freezing. Now the same process can be done on your meat samosas, your potato croquettes, and your fried kibbeh, and they all must be frozen before the final step, which is cooking them or frying them. Now to freeze your basic pizza dough, I have a separate video explaining how to freeze it, and I'm gonna put this video's link down in the description box down below the video. And once your ball of dough is frozen, it should be like this. Of course, it's rock hard. So whenever you want to use it, you just take it out of the freezer and let it thaw on your counter for about 2 to 3 hours. Now if you want to freeze your rolled out pizza crust, you can totally do that. All you have to do is to line your baking sheet with some cling film, just like that, and then put your rolled out dough in. Of course, you want to put it just like that on a single layer. Then you want to cover it again with a cling film so that when you freeze it, it doesn't change in color or form like a layer on the top. But if you want to freeze it with the sauce and cheese on, what you have to do is to bake the crust, just the crust on its own, for about 5 minutes in a preheated oven. Then you want to put the sauce and cheese on. Then you want to wrap it tightly and then freeze it, of course after it's cooled. And then whenever you want to eat a pizza, just take it out of the freezer, put the rest of the toppings on, and then bake it in the oven as usual. Now to freeze the falafel dough, I made a small batch here. All you have to do is to put it in your Ziploc bag. Of course, you want to use the quantity that you're gonna use in one day. Then you want to press on the bag just like that, so that the dough is flat and not very thick. And this comes in handy when you want to thaw it. Since the dough is thin and not very thick, it will thaw faster. And this is how it looks like once it's frozen. So when you want to eat them, you just thaw it, add the baking soda, and then you're ready to fry. Now let's move on to freeze meat and poultry. So you can do the marinade or add the spices that you like or you're used to. For example, I have here some drumsticks. I did a very delicious marinade, which I have a recipe on my channel. And now all I'm doing is to put them in a Ziploc bag. But the thing is here is I'm putting each batch in a Ziploc bag so that whenever I want to use them, I just take the whole bag out of the freezer and let it thaw. And I will be using the content of the bag in one batch or in one meal. Don't forget to write the content and the date of freezing. You can also freeze your meatballs. Of course, you want to season them with the spices or herbs that you like. And you want to form them into balls or patties or whatever shape you desire. Then you want to line a Tupperware with a cling film so that the meatballs don't stick to the bottom. Then place them inside separately, just like that. And if you want to put a second layer of meatballs, you just cover the first layer with more cling film so that the first layer doesn't stick to the second layer. And now you're ready to put the second batch of meatballs on top. Or you have another option, which is to put them in a Ziploc bag. Of course, you want to put each batch in a Ziploc bag so that each batch freezes together on its own. And whenever you want to use some, take a batch out of the freezer and let it thaw. Now, of course, you can do the same process with marinated chicken or beef shawarma or whatever kind of meat you like. Now, let's move on to freeze soups and sauces. Yes, some of them can be frozen. So I recommend freezing soups that are creamy and the soups that you process in your food processor. Soups that don't have chunks of veggies, because freezing it may change the texture of the vegetables. Now, of course, you want to cool it completely before freezing. You can make a big batch and then divide it into smaller batches. Here I'm storing the soup in small Tupperwares. And you can do the same thing with the pizza sauces or pasta sauces. You can freeze your sauces and soups in some Ziploc bags, but I prefer using Tupperware because they're liquids. I think that it's better because it prevents any spilling. Now let's move on to the things that we can prepare and use them on a daily basis, but cannot be frozen. So first off, I'm gonna start with some garlic. I use garlic in my cooking almost every day, and it's a pain to always peel garlic. I have here 1 or 2 heads of garlic, the quantity that I know I'm gonna use in a week or so. And I have a small Tupperware here which I lined with a small piece of paper towel. And I'm gonna put my garlic in. And the paper towel's job here is to draw out the moisture from the Tupperware so that the garlic cloves stays fresh for a long period of time. And don't grow those weird green sprigs that grow in the middle. I always do it, and my cloves of garlic stay fresh for about a week or so. Now for the salads, as we all know, in the month of Ramadan, we eat salads every single day. There must be a salad plate on your table. So instead of chopping your salad every day, what you can do is to make a big batch of your salad and divide it for like 2, 3, or even 4 days. And you have to have a very good Tupperware or any airtight container in which you will store your salad. Now the most important thing here is you want to put your heavy veggies at the bottom. For example, if you have tomatoes, onions, radishes, cucumbers, or green bell peppers, all of these veggies should be put at the bottom of the container. And then you want to top them with the leafy greens. For example, here I'm using lettuce. So you don't want any weight on your leafy greens, otherwise they will wilt. Also, you should store it just like that without adding any salt, lemon juice, or olive oil. And then the second day, all you have to do is to dump the salad in your bowl. And all it needs is some dressing and some toasted pita bread, which both you can do ahead of time. Now for the dressing, here I'm making one that I use every day for almost all the kind of salads I make. So first I'm gonna start with some lemon juice. In here you want to remember that each half a cup of lemon juice needs about 1 cup of olive oil. So here I had about 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of olive oil. Now I'm gonna add some salt, some freshly ground black pepper. Also, I'm gonna add some dried mint. I like the taste of it in my salad. And some sumac. You can add garlic if you like, some minced onions. Just make it to your liking. Now I'm gonna give it a slight stir, just like that. And then pour it in a jar, cover it tightly, and then I'm gonna place it in the fridge for whenever I wanna use it. It can last up to a week, and whenever you wanna use it, you wanna shake it very well, because lemon juice and olive oil tend to separate. Now finally, I'm gonna prepare some toasted pita bread chips. We use them a lot, especially in salads and fattoush. Here I'm just cutting them into squares, like a bite-sized piece square. I'm gonna drizzle some olive oil, a pinch of oregano, some garlic powder, and some salt. And then I'm gonna bake it in the oven for about 15 minutes, in a preheated oven of course, at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, until it's all brown and crispy, just like that. Then you wanna let it cool completely before storing it in a jar. You can also store it in a Ziploc bag or in an airtight container, and it stays fresh and crispy for up to a week. And here you go, your pita chips are ready to put on your salads or to snack on as they are. So that was today's video. I hope that I shared with you some of the tips that may be useful for you, because these are the tips and tricks that I usually do, and they really make my life easier. And I want to say that all the recipes that I mentioned in the video are all in my channel. They are all some delicious and easy recipes, and I'm gonna put the links for them down below the video in the description box, so don't forget to go and check them out. And I want to say in advance to all of you, Ramadan Mubarak, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye!